evening. The distance between New Delhi and Malé is roughly 2,700 kilometers. Over the past few years, it has been growing. With Chinese influence and investments on the rise, the Saudi-Wahhabi link strengthening, and now Pakistan wading into the troubled waters of Maldives. Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif, who himself faces an uncertain political future at home, is the chief guest for the Maldivian Independence Day tomorrow. This, a day after President Yamin used army to clamp down on the opposition in his country. On Gravitas tonight, we look at why this island nation, which will be underwater in 50 years' time, is so strategically important right now. How does India see the winds of change in Malé? I'm Palki Sharma Upadhyay. The headlines first. US President Donald Trump in a flurry of tweets. Hillary Clinton and his own Attorney General Jeff Sessions accuses Ukraine of boosting Hillary's presidential campaign, demands an investigation even as his son-in-law faces Senate scrutiny for alleged Russian collusion. China misleads the world. Its foreign minister says India admitted to entering Chinese territory even as no end in sight to the Doklam standoff. Floods ravage parts of India, Myanmar and China. 137 million lives at risk. Prime Minister Narendra Modi takes stock of the situation. The Turkish state news agency publishes a map showing the exact location of American military bases in northern Syria and the number of US troops stationed there, making American forces vulnerable. America is furious. As always, some specials for you on the show. Has the Lankan government revised the Hambantota agreement with China to allay India's concerns? What does the fine print say? We bring you the details with a ground report. Also, a terror funding report in the UK that gives Qatar an upper hand in the Gulf crisis. Is Saudi Arabia funding extremists in Britain? The devastating story of Charlie Gard, the child won't live. We look at what led to this. And finally, India has got a new president. Ram Nath Kovind's first day in office in images. Democracy is under lockdown. Members of parliament injured by riot police and in jail. A totalitarian regime under President Yamin is in growing trouble as it faces off with an almost entirely united opposition that is headed by two former presidents. It is this climate that Pakistan Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif arrived to in Malé today. He will be the chief guest at the Maldives' 52nd Independence Day celebrations. How close are Pakistan and the Maldives? And what other than being Muslim-majority countries do they have in common? What does this growing proximity mean for India? Senior foreign editor Padma examines this relationship.
Two Muslim-majority states in South Asia, one the largest, the other the smallest, both former British colonies. But it is much more than Islam as a state religion that brings Pakistan Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif to the Maldives this week. The idyllic archipelago is celebrating its 52nd day of independence and Prime Minister Sharif is the chief guest. But liberation of any kind is unlikely to be on the minds of any present at the celebration. PM Sharif is facing a tough corruption trial involving his entire family in his own country, while the Maldivian President Abdullah Yamin is caught in a web of deceit, nepotism and ruthless authoritarianism, all of his own doing. And the beautiful, fragile country of 1,000 islands and the gentlest people in South Asia in the clutches of Wahhabi Saudi Arabia and debt-trap investor China. The two countries already have agreements related to sports, health, education, narcotics and a multi-billion-dollar arms deal offered by Pakistan to the tiny nation. The highest number of recruits, though, to the Islamic State from South Asia went from the Maldives, and the democratically elected ex-president of the Maldives, Mohammad Nasheed, has warned several times against growing radicalization amongst Maldivian youth, primarily by Pakistan-based madrasas, which are frequented by many young Maldivians. Ironical, though predictable, therefore, that President Yameen and Prime Minister Sharif, of all leaders, will be earnestly chin-wagging on quote-unquote counter-terrorism measures. But there is one subject that seems uppermost on Prime Minister Sharif's mind. Pakistan is still smarting from a pullout by all South Asian nations from a regional SAARC summit in the wake of India's refusal to attend last year. One of the countries that stayed away from SAARC was the Maldives. New Delhi has been reticent rather than aggressive about its relationship with the Maldives, preferring to come to the rescue only at Mali's request to stand by during the odd coup attempt for low-key joint marine exercises. But with growing isolation in the region and the world, both Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif and President Yameen are lonely men. Desperate times have always called for desperate measures. Consequently, and if New Delhi has its ears to the ground, the gun salute to greet Prime Minister Sharif in faraway Male will not go unheard in South Block, New Delhi. Padma, WION.
What's happening in the Maldives is part of a pattern now of China extending its sphere of influence by doling out loans. The other prominent example is Sri Lanka. Their cabinet has cleared a revised Hambantota port agreement after it faced massive protests against the investment zone it offered to China. Though the details are yet to be disclosed, Reuters has put out a report saying that Sri Lanka, under the new deal, wants to limit China's role in running commercial operations at this port. While it maintains oversight of border security, Sri Lanka is on a massive debt, remember, towards China due to these infrastructure projects in Hambantota. It will transfer part ownership to China in a debt equity swap. A 15,000-acre industrial zone is also part of Sri Lanka's deal. But this sparked protests by locals and raised regional fears that it could be used for Chinese military ships. Reuters says that under the new deal, two separate companies will handle the Hambantota port and the industrial port deals respectively. Speaking to WION's Global Leadership Series, Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe earlier this year had said that ties with China are not at India's expense. However, he remained non-committal on the issue of visits by Chinese ships to Sri Lanka. Here's a report.
Every argument, every road seems to lead to Sri Lanka's eastern port of Hambantota these days. External debt is huge, a 12th owed to China alone. And the payback method floated by Colombo hasn't found much favour with ordinary Sri Lankans. China may receive up to 80% equity for debt at the loss-making port, and several thousand acres of farmland too. Neighbouring India is worried, and Sri Lankans are up in arms against what they see as a sellout. Hambantota port is heavily guarded, and Chinese families can be seen relaxing on the verandas of their quarters or driving around. Inside the premises, it seems business as usual.
Yes, my small shop falls within the land to be given away to the Chinese. I have been living here 15 years. I inherited the land from my parents. My children go to school here. I have no problem with the port opening as such, but they have to think of the people who live here too. We don't want to move from here because the children's education and their future will be bleak.
Hambantota is the home constituency of Sri Lanka's former president Mahinda Rajapaksa. It was under him that the port was commissioned and 750 acres of land initially given to the Chinese. Yet, Hambantota residents loyal to their home leader say it's not quite the same thing.
There is a difference. Mahinda built the port and developed this area. The new government of Ranil Wickremesinghe has sold everything. That is the difference.
I'm standing here right in front of the 15,000 acres that have been demarcated in Hambantota at the port for a new industrial zone, an economic zone that is to be built by China, and China is to be leased this land for 99 years. That's what's causing worries here in Hambantota. It attracted protesters from the local areas, but they say that they were on a satyagraha and stones were flung at them by the authorities on the other side of the fence behind me. There are rumours galore. that Hambantota will be invaded by Chinese settlers. And given the burgeoning presence of nationals of China all over Sri Lanka, those fears may not be entirely baseless.
I recently heard some people talking here. I heard that warships will come and military activity will commence here. We also heard that 10,000 Chinese families will come here to settle here on these 15,000 acres that they are giving to China. This is my country. This is my area. This is my past, future and present.
The Gotapapita monastery atop a hill with a 360-degree view will be one of 25 temples to disappear. And what better place to construct premium condominiums for rich expats like elsewhere in the tropical paradise? But, inspired perhaps by accidents at atomic plants around the world, Chief Monk Thera Gotabaya Amita is preoccupied by other, darker concerns.
The building of this port is very harmful to our country. Some of the countries involved here produce chemicals. We think that those countries will bring chemical factories to Hambantota through an agreement which our government will sign with those countries. It will be very harmful to the people of Hambantota. These harmful chemicals will also affect our temple.
Whatever the fate of Hambantota, it is the secrecy shrouding Colombo's moves that is angering people the most. They will not accept money but rather die, they say. But would that not amount to violence, a concept shunned by Buddhism, their essentially peaceful religion?
Yes, Buddhism is a peaceful religion. But Buddhism also has a connection with our people which can be compared to like a tree to its skin. So whatever it takes to resist this port, we will do more than what it takes. And if it means giving up our life too, we don't care. One of the things we do here is to motivate people and to protect this area and our motherland.
Sri Lanka has a huge external debt, $8 billion towards China, 1.5 of which rests here in this port alone. They're planning to give away 15,000 additional acres of land predominantly belonging to farmers to China on a 99-year lease. And they're also planning to give China an 80% stake in this port. To the right of me, there's going to be another new terminal, and to the left of me, the same. This is Padma Rao, exclusively for WION, World is One News, in Hambantota Port, southeastern Sri Lanka.
So does this new agreement take into consideration fears expressed by India? Is this an effort to allay India's concerns? Or is it just something that is in the interest of Sri Lanka? That question still remains while we are trying to examine the fine print. You can watch the interview with the Sri Lankan Prime Minister earlier this year on WIONews.com. We're going to take a break. Still ahead on this show, how a new report on terror funding puts British Prime Minister Theresa May and Saudi Arabia on the spot, and why it helps Qatar.